25 kids. 2 years ago when my junior was a freshman, they did not even have a girls basketball team for freshmen. So they had the money, they had the coach, they had the space. They did not put together a boys team, they just cut 20 kids. So I just feel it's not a good policy at all.
Thank you. Any questions of clarification?
No, I just always like to make sure that you're aware that we can't discuss it right now among ourselves.
Yeah,
because
no,
it's on the agenda. Okay. But
if I don't get, I
you
mean,
can ask
I
the
went
questions.
to principal before Christmas, and I left my email, I haven't heard anything of it, so. I mean, I just think that I feel really bad for the kids, because I mean, we're at youth night, and we're sitting there, and it's like, you know, you gotta tell these parents, you know, because I mean, I believe it's perpetuated from the coaches down, that if you aren't doing club, there's not gonna be a spot for you in high school. So I mean, they're just driving this thing, and it's just getting worse. Because we could not afford, I have 3 kids, there's no way I could afford it. And I have plenty of ideas how to do it, and how to make money. I mean, I don't want to hear that we can't afford it, because I don't believe that. We can afford to put some money into the kids. Everybody talks about how important it is, but then it's only important to those 15 freshman boys or those 15 freshman girls out of a class of over 200. And a lot of these kids, that's all they do. My son and a couple of his friends, that's the only sport they do. So I mean, it starts in 7th grade with this A and B teams, where the A team plays 2 games a week and the B team only gets 1. You know, so I'm like, why isn't it 3 equal teams and everybody's playing an equal amount? Because the kids that are playing on the A team are already playing in a club sport, so they're already playing how many games on the weekend. We're just putting them out there to get hurt. I think it's just that much more opportunity for them to get hurt. And maybe the kid that's not as good, playing with the kid that's better, will drive him, right? And maybe it'll teach the kid that's better how to really be a leader, okay? Because a lot of these, if you look at that freshman team, I'll bet you 4 out of 5 of them, I don't know this as a fact, but I'll bet you 4 out of 5 of them have probably been playing club ball together already for years.
I know we're limited on time.
Okay.
And we can only ask questions. And so
Okay.
I just wanted to thank you for coming and let you know that we're hearing what you're saying.
Okay.
Because this is a topic that many of the board members know is very close to my heart as well. And so I can't discuss it with you right now, but I just want to thank you for coming in. We're short on time. But thank you.
Okay. So I guess my one question would be, where does it go from here, though? Do I just wait, or do I come back next month? Because I really will want an answer. So.
Well, as policy chair, it's something that I can, any of us can further discuss it with Dan and with the agenda. We could put it on an agenda for a later board meeting. I could put it on an agenda for policy meeting. We have one coming up in a little bit. That's not generally a policy issue, though. It's more of a, because that's we don't have policies related to that, but it's something that we could discuss anyway.
I'll communicate with you. Yeah, I'll get.
Because I mean, if it's more parent support, I only talked to a few people that said they covered. I didn't put anything on social. I didn't want to make it like some kind of ambush or something. I wanted to bring it up. I wanted to see, but I think something has to be done.
Thank you.
So.
And
Thank you.
Dr. Olson will respond.
Okay.
Which I really appreciate. I'll say I've raised the same question and feel really comfortable that it's being heard.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public appearance is Janine Kamita. And again, would you please state your name and address? And again, good reminder, you have about 3 minutes. Thank you.
Janine Kamita, 402 Dublin Circle, Cottage Grove. I'm here to talk to you about the lack of accountability in the district. You are the CEOs of this school district. It is your job to enforce these school board policies. You have a lot of policies out there that are not being followed by administrators or staff, and I'm here to ask you to start enforcing those and hold people accountable to them. You have a district strategic plan. In the mission statement, there's 2 points that are not being upheld. You've got goals that, again, there's no accountability. We adopted this one-to-one Chromebook, put all this money into it. We put all this money into teacher in-service, and when I asked the high school principal, what is your expectation for your teachers to integrate technology? He didn't have one. He's like, I think that might be covered in the strategic plan. He didn't know what it was. So no accountability there. I need to see some return on investment. The amount of money for every staff member to be in service for a half a day in salary, plus the cost of the Chromebooks, there needs to be some return. My child has not used that Chromebook once for an educational purpose, and according to your mission and your strategic goal, he's supposed to be using it effectively and having it integrated into his education, and it's not happening. Policy 2260, your superintendent's supposed to review the current and new curriculum for any bias for a protected class. Obviously that has not taken place as you have bias in your curriculum. 2521, district doesn't discriminate on the basis of a protected class. Again, that is happening in your curriculum. You are doing it regularly on a yearly basis with your English 9 class. You tend to put a lot of things in writing, but there's nothing backing up what's in writing, okay? You write these policies, these are supposed to govern our school district, and it's your job to enforce it, and you're not doing that. You're not holding the administration accountable, you're not holding teachers accountable, and that is your job as a school board. So I'm here to ask for you what you're going to do and when you're going to start doing it to hold people accountable to what you have as your policies to run our school. And I would expect a response not from Dr. Olson, but from the school board itself, as he is an employee of the school board, or of the school district, not part of your CEO board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public appearance tonight is Joan, is it Heineke? Heineke, thank you.
I'm Joan Heineke. I live at 3785 Janelle Lane, Cottage Grove. For the past 5 years or so, I've tried to encourage the promotion of vocational pursuits for high school students and encouraging a strong general educational experience for students while they're in high school. I've done this during parent forum meetings at the high school and while talking to high school teachers during parent-teacher conferences. Early on, years ago, when the banners were put up outside the high school IMC and there was a couple articles promoting skilled labor in plumbing, construction, those types of careers in the Independent Herald, I thought, great, this is good. A wide variety of careers and options for students were being presented to the students, not just college-bound paths. However, that did not continue. At the high school, the focus and push has been for AP classes. AP, that's all I heard about at parent forum meetings, even as it was shared that students were dropping choir and band and orchestra to fit in more AP classes. Even as it was shared with me a year ago, so not last semester, but the last spring semester, from Mr. Groff, who had shared with me that a lot of kids were being stressed out and he was telling other counselors, you know, we gotta watch how many AP classes these kids are taking and how overwhelmed they're getting. Still the push for AP, even last semester, enough kids were being stressed out that Dr. Brost had shared at a parent forum meeting, just throwing it out there, suggesting that maybe if kids were taking 3 or maybe more than 3 AP classes, maybe they should be flagged and counseled as to whether this is really appropriate. And this shouldn't be happening. But of course, it is happening. It's always been a push to get as many AP classes as you can before you go to college, and the expectation that you're only recognized as a top academic student if you've taken as many AP classes as you possibly can. Students should not be dropping out of arts and taking on more AP classes, especially in a year when the focus for staff is wellness and balance, and we had an in-service where you were to do coloring activities and different things to promote well-being in our lives. Then we should be focusing on that and teaching that on the kids. Now you could say that, yes, in health class and stuff, we're telling kids to have a balanced life, but that's not the expectation that we're giving kids. We're giving kids that you should be working and you should be taking as many college-bound classes and you should be doing this volunteer work and you should be doing that, but you should be getting 8 hours of sleep and you should be eating, you know, a meal with your parents. It's like we say that, but that's not the expectation. The expectation, I feel, is that you, in your high school, you should get a semester's worth of college classes before you get to college. Now, I'm not saying kids shouldn't have the opportunity to do that. There are some kids where they thrive with that. But I'm saying that the push and the expectation is college-bound and AP classes. And we need skilled laborers in the community. We need plumbers, we need construction workers, and those are viable and respectable careers. And the kids should be told that, should be put in a broad general so that, you know, they're in high school, they're living a life that is suiting them, that they're see these options for careers in their lives, but also maintaining the arts as part of a wellness. You know, they have to do physical education because that's maintained by the state standard, but the arts also should be encouraged. You shouldn't be sacrificing one for the other, because we would like them to be well-rounded people in their community, in their lives, when they go out into the workforce. Now, I know that this year you've added at the high school this advisory once a month. They meet with an advisor, but the feedback I get from the community, it's still mainly college, college, college. And that's just, you know, we need to be broader than that. And I think, I'm not positive, that there was a career or maybe something advisor hired, maybe a new position. I thought I saw something like that. Maybe I'm incorrect. But again, I hope the push isn't just college, just AP, AP, AP. High school is high school. There's things that you should be able to experience here that's not being a junior college. Now, I could have just emailed you all this, but I know you have a lot on your plates. And so I didn't want it just to be passed over. I wanted to come here personally and present this to you, because like I said, I've talked about it at the high school and parent forum meetings and with high school teachers, and, you know, but that's not, the feeling I get is the push at the high school, the leadership there is for AP, because I mean, all things are in AP now. Kids are being stressed out, and now all of a sudden we're looking at it, which is ridiculous, because that could have been avoided. I've heard many teachers who say, yeah, you know, it shouldn't just be all about AP, and yes, it's you know, the expectations are unrealistic as far as, you know, everything you expect these kids to do. High school is so stressful, and they shouldn't come out thinking that this is what their life should be. If I'm not going 24/7, I'm not being successful. That's probably, so, thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time, and
Thank you.
let's discuss.
All right, and our final public appearance tonight, is it Branda?
I
Oh.
don't need to speak.
Oh, so sorry, okay, thank you. We'll document that though.
What,
Did you register?
Oh, I
register
apologize,
something?
yep,
Yeah,
let me,
could you?
yeah, I sure can. So, if I may, shall I do the person's name? And is it Wykes?
Yes.
Thank you. So Brenda Wykes at 6011 Winnequa Road in Monona would like us to be in favor of taking a look at freshman sport policy to make sure that it addresses all student needs. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you to everyone who came in to speak tonight. That takes us to our consent agenda. And would we like to approve that in total, or did we want to break that into
I'd
pieces?
move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The consent agenda is approved.
However, do you want
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, we're good.
Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure. That would take us to our recognitions.
It's okay, I'd like to begin. So in the consent agenda you just approved was a letter from Principal Renee Tennant from Glacial Gentleman School announcing her retirement at the end of the school year. Renee has been with the district for 20 years. I'd like to start by just personally saying congratulations, and as well as, of course, thank you for unbelievable service to the district in more than one role, the student services director as well as principal. So Renee is with us tonight, and again, really, really appreciate the work that you have done for our kids in the district.
other recognitions for this evening?
We have some.
Yes,
So,
please.
Dr. Ross and I had the opportunity to attend the Martin Luther King breakfast on January 14th, as we do every year, to recognize our outstanding young people from each of our schools, along with all the other Dane County middle schools and high schools. It's really a wonderful program that honors the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his service, standards for service to the community, and leadership and character. And so we would really like to recognize the students from our buildings. From Glacial Drumlin, 6th graders Kylia Daniels and Lila Fackel, 7th graders Madi McCautry and Tia Santiago, and 8th graders Jada Turner and Kinga Tran.
And the high school students recognized for outstanding young person were Darian Johnson, Gabrielle Moon, Lydia Miller, Sanai Samia, and Yardonis Musi. And Marcus Seaton, who's a senior, was one of 4 students from the entire area who was received one of the scholarships. So that was a very nice recognition for Marcus.
Thank you. All right, that takes us then to our correspondence and announcements.
I think just to note, I think all board members received a correspondence that came through the mail, so you have that with you this evening.
Any other announcements? All right. That then takes us to our special reports, and tonight we have a Facilities Advisory Committee update.
Okay, I'm flying solo tonight. So you all got late this afternoon the information that summarized our meeting from January 9th and then again from last night. So we've had 2 meetings since the last time we were here. The 9th, the highlights are that we broke up into small groups of 5 groups of 4, and each of those groups started looking at the options, the 7 options that have been presented, and started whittling down that list. And then we had a discussion amongst all of the groups as a whole on yes, no, maybes, things we get rid of from that group of from that table, so to speak. That led us down to having 3 options left as we got into last night. Option B, option D, and option C4 were the 3 options that kind of remained as they're labeled. So last night we had another discussion about that. As a whole, everybody that was there got a chance to thumbs up, thumbs down, so to speak, on those options that they liked, didn't like, and why. And it's kind of come to the point now where next week when we get together, we'll come with start putting together our preliminary recommendations. But coming out of last night, one of the points was that option C will most likely not be one of the recommendations, which was the option that includes Maywood as a potential alternative. There's still some people that are interested in that for various reasons or more discussion on it, but for the general consensus is that won't be coming forward to you right now as we're kind of laying things out. Even those that are not in favor of that option want it clearly understood that Maywood was strongly considered, that there's just too many negatives against it as far as pricing goes, space goes, efficiency, redundancy of education for the middle school, those types of things. So we want to make sure that as we move forward and we bring things to you, that gets fully explained as we take the next steps. Next steps are to come to you with a preliminary recommendation. Then we go to the public with the survey that you guys will put together. And then the facilities committee will get back together in May to revise a last minute formal proposal, we'll call it, or formal recommendation. So that's kind of the last 2 meetings we've had. We've got 1 more next week, and then we come to you on the 14th with a preliminary recommendation. So I guess, questions? Oh, man.
Not
Thought I'd be
that
done.
easy. Not that easy. Jason, thank you for all you're doing on that committee. One of the things that I'm looking at as I think about how the options are being presented is whether it's being articulated clearly enough that the options are 5 schools versus 6 schools. And how we're talking about what the associated operating costs are to operate 6 schools instead of 5 schools. Because to me, looking at the materials, that jumped out so clearly. And I was just wondering if you could share a little bit about how the facilities committee has been talking about that topic.
I think that, you know, the cost of adding the 6th school, which is basically Maywood, make sure I got the right sheet, and it's just eye-opening as to the cost of adding that additional school and how that impacts the operating budget.
Mhm.
You know, it almost doubles bringing a new school on and adding a 2nd school in Maywood, if that in option C, that almost doubles the year-to-year operating budget. So I think people within the committee understand that it'll be getting that information onto the public. I think that's one of the biggest drawbacks to that plan. So
Thanks. I just wanted to put that out there as,
Yeah.
because when you only are talking about, even in this kind of forum, whether or not to use Maywood,
yeah,
that framing it that way kind of maybe is harder for people to understand.
Yeah, you're right.
Instead of talking about
It's-
it, we're talking about 5 schools or 6 schools.
yeah.
And how many more costs are associated with running 6 schools.
Yeah, and you know, frankly, this building was brought up as, you know, we need to document why this building is being fully utilized right now, so that people don't think, well, there's excess space here,
Mhm.
because there's really not excess space in this building, from, you know, my knowledge of it. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
that's it, I like that.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. That takes us then to our administrative reports and the superintendent's report.
And actually, I have nothing to report out this evening.
That then takes us to our board reports, starting with our legislative report from Susan Fox.
Well, as you know, I attended a hearing January 11th on AB 693, dubbed the Teacher Protection Act, and my testimony essentially is included here, if you haven't had a chance to read that yet. I did get there about 9:15, was finally called on after 3 p.m., so it was pretty clear they put all of it on a row people late, because they did juggle us toward the end. Anyway, that's how it was. But I give credit to the committee too. The chair stayed through the entire thing, and Representative Thiesfeld, who sponsored this bill, had to leave. They all had to kind of come and go to vote with other committees. Also stayed to the end and asked questions of everybody, and Jeff also was able to testify at the end, and we were right after Dan Rossmiller. I think there's still a sense that this is the one that would enable teachers to simply decide to remove a child from their class for up to 2 days, bypassing the administration, and we are very opposed to it because it disrupts the entire chain of command, and right at a time when we're all working on ways not to suspend, to bring suspensions down, the whole thing, it just interferes with the entire way. All of our goals, and the strategic plan was mentioned earlier, but all the things we are trying to work on, and we realize that these are steps we're taking, but it just seems totally inappropriate. And then another piece of it would be that the teacher could then also appeal directly to the school board, once again bypassing the administration, both the principal and the superintendent. And that was one of the questions I was asked, was would we like it to go to the board president of the board, and my response was we don't want it to go to the board, period. We don't, this is not a responsibility the whole bill just is not something that anybody's asking for. So in fact, interestingly, it came from, the motivation for it seems to be a radio broadcast in Milwaukee, where there were 6 or 8 teachers, I think, who had incidents in their classrooms where they were physically threatened, in one case furniture thrown, that kind of thing. So they were serious incidents, and they were not happy with how they were dealt with, and that's kind of what was behind some of this. Interestingly, though, the Milwaukee's Teachers Association and WEAC both oppose this bill because they also see issues with disrupting the way schools traditionally operate in this way. So hopefully that won't go. On a higher note, this week and tomorrow there's a hearing related to this. I think there is, the governor has proposed increasing sparsity aid for these, none of these affect us, but they affect other districts in the state, and they're very significant, really. Increasing sparsity aid from $300 per pupil to $400 per pupil, and this applies to districts that are under 746 students and have at least no more than about 10 kids per square mile. So, hence sparsity, large districts where there are huge transportation costs which have been killing them. And a lot of these districts really suffered even more under the revenue limits, so this would increase their aid. And then also the low revenue ceiling, which some districts way back when we started revenue limits were not taxing to the full ability, and they've really been penalized because they've only been able to raise it X amount each year, and they're struggling and having to go to referendum more often. So this would increase their per pupil revenue, or their ability to raise their revenue ceiling by $100 each year until 2022-23, when it would be a total of $9,800. So right now it's $9,100 is their ceiling. They could take it to ultimately keep raising it to they could raise it to $9,400 next year and then $100 each year. The only caveat with that, which the WSB supports both of these, but it's trying to get them to amend this, because any district that has had a failed referendum can't use this for a 3-year period, even retroactively. So even these districts that are struggling, who maybe had a failed referendum, the penalty for not passing a referendum is that they also don't get this aid. So they're working on that. We'll see where that goes. There's also the competitive bidding mandate, which we also oppose and WSB opposes. That would be mainly on local control grounds. That would say that if we had a construction project of any kind, capital maintenance work, and the cost was going to be $50,000 or more, we would have to go to sealed competitive bids, which means we have to take the lowest bidder. It would mean we can't do the design build procurement type work that we've done in the past. Couldn't necessarily work with local contractors, even if a company from Illinois, in fact, for instance, came in and underbid, we'd have to take those bids. Municipalities kind of favor it because their current level is $25,000. They like being boosted to $50,000, but school districts oppose it. Wanakee gave very articulate, very strong testimony. They have some very strong relationships with construction businesses in Wanakee, and they felt this really would hamper the work that they do. There's another one on suspension expulsion for firearms. This one WSB supports. This would give local control to a student who, currently, if a student is on school property, meaning even school grounds, with even an unloaded hunting rifle, for example, locked in the case in the trunk of their car, they could, and that came to light, they could face suspension and expulsion. And the idea is that it shouldn't be mandated by law, that school districts should have some ability to look at individual incidents and make these kinds of decisions. So the WSB supports that. There are other referendum restrictions kicking around. They do have a hearing tomorrow on the revenue limit and sparsity aid. I will not be able to go to that, but hopefully there's enough. Hopefully, since the governor is behind that, and he's the one who brought it up, hopefully there'll be support for that. And then a couple other bills that I'm not sure will go anywhere. And the other thing is, like the governor also, they did also establish, this partly came from influence of the governor, I think, but also the legislature, they have this blue ribbon commission on school funding, and even though it's kind of easy to be cynical and think maybe it won't go anywhere, I think the people on it are pretty excited about it. They really think they might be able to get somewhere. It's gonna tackle a lot of issues, and they'll hold hearings around the state. Julie Underwood, former dean of education at the UW, is on it. Sandy Pope, Representative Sandy Pope, so some education-friendly people are on it. Dan Rossmiller is on it. So we'll have to see where that goes, and they don't have their schedule of hearings yet, but, hopefully it'd be great if they come up with some solutions to myriad problems that we all face. That's it in a nutshell. That was one of the sections I went to at the convention as well. I was kind of following it. It's a good wrap up.
One good thing about being last was by the time we testified, the whole committee was back.
Yeah,
It took like an hour or two, 3 hour break by the time we were back. Another thing that I noticed is Jeremy Feastfeld, who authors a lot of these bills, doesn't really know what we do, because he was like, should I talk to the board president? And we're like, well, the board president is one of 7.
Right.
So, you know, we work as a board, and then he's like, one thing I wanna do is make sure teachers can contact the board. What keeps a teacher from contacting the board? Like, we're in the buildings, we're at the store, we're everywhere. I mean, trust me, we know that if a teacher has a problem, they will contact the board. I mean, that doesn't need to be legislated into effect. I mean, we've heard from teachers and parents and everything all the time, so that's all I'm gonna say.
Okay.
Thank you, Susan.
Sure.
Good information all around. That takes us then to our report on the Joint Education Convention, which took place last week. And rather than going at length, if we could certainly report out any highlights, especially as they directly connect to our work. Yes.
Yeah,
Karen?
I was really happy to go and wanted to report back to all of you how it went in the delegate assembly. Because you allowed me to represent us this time. And I got the yellow card to hold up and vote. I was very pleased to do that. And the one thing that I wanted to mention that would be of note for anyone who volunteers to do this next year, I know Susan's had experience doing this, but I wasn't sure how many other people had already been the delegate. And I was somewhat taken by surprise that one of the things that we agreed to here that I would support got changed by an amendment during the session. And so we were in there, and I think, well, now am I authorized to vote for this? And I had to think about where we were as a board. And I wanted to compliment both Jared and Dan and Joyce, 3, I don't know, both is 2, but whatever the 3 adjective is, for responding to me during the delegate assembly when I was having a little bit of a freak out, like, is this okay? And what do we do in our district? And I just needed a little more information, and I felt confident after that check-in. So my other takeaway from the delegate assembly is, aside from that amendment, which caused some Robert's Rules of Order duress because they couldn't keep track of the amendment and the process and once I got that figured out, everything else went extremely quickly and went according to what we here had voted to support is what passed in the delegate assembly. So there's no other real interesting stuff to report, except to thank you for letting me have that opportunity. I was really glad that I got to go this year. I liked it. And as a side note, which I think I've said the last 2 years going to the convention, I'm really, really proud to be from Monona Grove. When you go to that convention and you see everybody else in the state and where we're positioned and what we have going on here, I mean, I just get a little like silly about it, but like I'm really happy to represent us, and I like coming back here afterwards after hearing all the other things that people have to deal with and what limits they have on the resources and pushback they get from their communities and all the kinds of things. Just come back home here and feel really blessed in our community that we've got going, what we have, that people are active and involved and caring about what we're doing, and it just feels really good. So I wanted to say the stuff passed we wanted, a little bit of controversy on my part and got resolved very quickly, and then again, thanks for letting me go. That was my, try to keep it brief.
You're fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Would anyone else care to comment on any highlights? Yes?
So the best one I saw was Patty Shackner, who is our new senator from up north. She's also a medical examiner. And she talked about ACEs, and she pointed out everybody should go and take their own ACE test to see where you are, because you'd be surprised at what some people are. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have problems or you need more help, but everybody's different resiliencies. But the one thing she pointed out that really stuck with me, and I want to do some more research on, is every 911 call affects your school. She said there's 84,000 people in her county, and there's 94,000 911 calls last year. And it isn't just, a death or a domestic disturbance. It could be a car accident, and those kids have to go to school the next day. And they're in the classroom, and you don't know it, and that you don't know there's 20-some kids bringing different baggage every day, some more than others, and some one day could be a major deal, and the next day it isn't. And so it's something that we gotta to really pay attention to a little bit more, where that's where social emotional learning that we've talked a lot about really comes into play, so that they know, these kids know that they have a safe spot somewhere in the school to go to. And somebody was a social worker raised their hand and said, like, my ACE score is 8, which you wouldn't mother was strong, but not everybody has a strong mother, not everybody has a strong father. Maybe it's the janitor at school, maybe it's the math teacher, it could be anything. And that's why we gotta really pay attention to the whole kid, the whole child education, not the test scores. So.
Yeah.
Well, and I
thank
think
you.
that was, I didn't go to any sessions on mental health this time, and I didn't go to that one, but I went to a conference earlier in the year by Journey Mental Health, just on my own, and they talked a lot about that. There's so much more to talk about that. I think we're poised in our schools. We are doing more with the mental health teams at every school. That was also something that was brought up to Representative Thiesfeld about the Teacher Protection Act, that if you're really serious about helping kids and helping these kinds of situations and where kids are sometimes acting out, more funding in the mental health area, more funding for social workers, that kind of thing, and support would help with that a lot. I think that fell on deaf ears, but that was one of the points he brought up. I went to a bunch, actually. I went to a lot of the same ones Susan did in the beginning, so I have similar comments, except I thought Robbie was better than apparently she did. He talked, interestingly, he talked a lot about the value of music connecting with millennials, and it kind of connected with me because at this same mental health conference where I was, Everett Mitchell spoke, and he talked about the importance of music, and we talked about athletics a little bit tonight. He talked about the importance of encouraging students of color, not the stereotypical and always encouraging them in sports. That's fine, but he said music. He talked about how important that was. Music, the movement involved with music, and what it does for your brain and that whole thing. So it was interesting to hear one of the keynoters was talking about that and how he brought different cultural groups together through music, and it's just a good reminder of the importance of the arts in our schools, and I think in this district we have valued that, and we need to continue. The session that Susan mentioned that I also went to was the Integrated Comprehensive System for schools with Elise Ventura and Dr. Colleen Capper. And it gave me a better understanding of what we're doing now in our schools with universal design. It also raised a whole lot of questions with me, but I'm not going to take up board time with those. So at a future date. And then lastly, I went to one by School Perceptions about the importance of surveys for community engagement. It really gave me a really clear idea of how helpful that can be with the kind of referendum we're talking about. They talked about 8-page and 12-page surveys because they really look at them as a way to educate people. When Jason was just talking about the concern raised by particularly people in Monona, but really everybody on that committee, about we have to be able to explain to people, Maywood and Nichols, what the limitations are, those kinds of issues. So I'm very interested in what goes forward with our survey. And I also came away very impressed with the School Perception people's ability to put one of these together because the examples they gave. So that was also very timely.
Okay.
I just want to point out we did get our mandatory report from Susan, so that's good.
Yes, there are written notes on file here,
Yeah,
so
the,
we all
the
saw
Bob
what
guy.
sessions were attended.
Right.
Yes, notes from Susan Manning are in our board docs if you'd like to continue with any further information there. All right. Yes.
For the first time in 10 years, I didn't get a chance. I wasn't able to attend the education, like you mentioned, but I appreciate my colleagues very much who did, and it's always a great place to get ideas and put what we do in perspective.
Totally.
And how were the desserts? Okay, let's move on. All right. Full joke.
Just make one comment if I could. I just want to, first of all, thank Carrie and Susan and Susan Manning for coming to the pre-conference a half a day on Tuesday, on the one on the ICSF equity with, Colleen Kappa and Capper and Elise Ventura. And one of the things, we'll talk more about this next time we revisit strategic planning and so on. We don't use the term ICS equity. We refer to the term, service delivery, but it's all the same framework. And so again, to spend another half a day with that, as much as I've been through that sessions, having doing that again, especially in the presence with our boards, is really helpful for me as well. And so it's constantly evolving. We're certainly not where we need to be yet.
Well, and it's interesting. It's based on like 45 years of research, and it's not like a totally new thing. It was very helpful for me to understand it better. And as I said, so questions.
Yeah, that triggered something for me in response to your question about what we learned that relates to our work in the district. And sitting in that session on Tuesday afternoon and hearing the damaging effects that pull-out types of instruction have at all different types of learners, wherever they are on the spectrum. It was really powerful to me, in particular because I came home and one of my children was talking about a pull-out experience that was extremely positive for that child.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you just have to keep checking yourself on the effect that had a label, which I'm remembering as prejudice lift, which had to do with how you widen your mental perception of how much better you think you are if you've been pulled out for the different kind of instruction where your perception is that it's at the higher end, and how actually that is really harmful for a whole bunch of reasons. And I really liked having the vocabulary to understand that. And I feel like that informs my thinking about where I am in my own advocacy for what I would like our instruction to be able to do for kids. So I appreciated the chance to go. I feel like I was able to apply the things in that session in particular to some conversations we'll continue to have here.
Great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That then takes us to possible action items, and tonight we have open enrollment recommendations for 2018-2019, which we had for discussion at our last meeting.
Yep, thank you, Jennifer. So these are the exact same numbers that we presented at the last meeting. The document that is for approval breaks it down by grade level. Open enrollment period runs from February 5th through April 30th. And the reason that the document that you have in front of you is only broken by grade, not building, is the district has when people apply, the ability to place people based on where our resident enrollment is. However, you saw at the last meeting how we came up with those open enrollment numbers. So I'm not going to go any farther unless there's other questions, since we sort of talked about this at the last meeting.
No changes from last meeting?
No changes.
I'd like to move approval of the 2018-19 open enrollment recommendations. Would you like me to read the rest of the way it appears in board docs?
Yes, it has.
Okay, as follows, just double checking. Love the airtime.
You can just say yes. You can say yes.
4K, 10 seats.
No.
Okay, that's why I was double
Has to be in
checking.
the minutes detailed.
Yeah,
It does.
4K,
Oh,
10
okay.
seats, kindergarten, 15 seats, first grade, 10 seats, second grade, 4 seats, third grade, 10 seats, fourth grade, 14 seats, and fifth grade, 4 seats, 0 in the subsequent grades, for a total of 67 seats. No seats will be open for grades 6 to 12 in pre-K. I didn't see that second part. Good. I want to make sure we got that in there. We're good. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Our enrollment for open enroll are approved.
I'll just add a quick point of
Forget the long
clarification.
discussion.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you. Yeah, do we have further discussion?
Well, just real quickly to clarify the motion, normally when we have documents, we'll say as presented and then the document speaks for itself. We got a memo from DPI reminded us that to make sure our minutes actually reflect the actual seats in the narrative of the minutes, for communication. So that's why a little bit lengthier.
Right on.
Thank you. Dean?
I'd just like to point out, reiterate what I said last time when this was presented, is that I think for a number of years now, this has been managed superbly in the same way, that we've been able to control numbers at grade level properly, and we've also been able to maximize the income potential from it as well, which has benefited our overall program. So I think it's been a plus plus. I think, Dan, you said once that 10 open enrollments are roughly the payment for one teacher.
Correct.
Is that true?
Yep.
Anything further? Thank you, Mr. Sobel, for the reminder. I appreciate that. I do. All right. We have no posted discussion items for tonight. And we do have a lovely list of future meetings and events.
Okay, so if you look on board docs, we updated this today, so, the last three in red, we'd like to go through and these are proposed dates, but we'd like to, check calendars, and they're really important dates related to facilities planning coming up. So initially, I'd sent, I think, a memo back in December asking you to put a hold on February 21st. Since that time, we found that we have a conflict, and so, the committee, the Facilities Advisory Committee, at our regular board meeting on February 14th is going to present their preliminary recommendation. We'd like to have a full board workshop following that, where you can really, as an entire board, discuss that recommendation as well as, the other, anything about that.
14?
So, yeah, so that's at a regular board meeting on the 14th. So we'd like to shortly thereafter have a workshop, so we're proposing two possible dates, either February 19th or February 26th. They're both Monday nights, but if we could get a commitment from our board on one of those nights, that would be helpful.
That would be the one topic of discussion?
That'd be the only topic, correct, facilities.
Either fine is fine with me.
Unfortunately, I can't make either of those, but carry on.
Yeah, I probably prefer the 19th. I have meetings both those nights, but that one might be easier for me to miss.
Earlier day sounds good.
So, should we schedule the 19th?
Yeah.
And certainly on the 14th, we'll have some discussion at that meeting as well, but there can be some.
I'll tell you.
19th?
So 19th? Okay, and we'll make sure we get,
What kind of time are we, 6?
so a lot of times we've done workshops at 6, does that seem reasonable?
Yeah.
So the goal on the 19th would be a full-blown board discussion of the recommendations that we heard on the 14th.
Correct, yeah.
Shouldn't we
Would you
find
expect that we take action that night?
No,
should we find a time when Peter can be there, like the whole board, because this is a major decision?
Well, as always, it's often hard to get everybody
No, I
on
know,
board,
but
and if it's just one,
we didn't even
and I
like-
understand it's my fault,
Seemed to
and you
look
guys
at
need to
that,
carry
though.
on. I mean, I'd appreciate it if we moved it out of there,
Right.
but I
And-
understand the hardness, the difficulty
Yeah.
of getting everybody in.
now, the other thing is, I think those are really the only two dates we have available between board meetings. The other thing is we can just put it as part of the regular board meeting, but understand, I expect some lengthy discussion, and so that might make for some long board meetings. Could we do it some, so we can get through as much as we can on the 14th.
Considering that our board meetings of late have not been particularly time-consuming, I mean, that's perfectly reasonable. And it's-
So-
But then it would push it to the end of February. It would be like February
Yeah.
20, last day.
28th.
It would be a regular board meeting on
Yeah.
that 28th.
Do you just plan to stay on the 14th?
Well, and what we can do is see where the discussion goes on the 14th, and then
Yeah, we do have
decide where we're at as far as needed discussion. One of the big things the board's gonna have to do is, a lot of the hard work's gonna be is, first of all, do you questions and regarding the committee's recommendation, but that survey is gonna require a lot of work. What sorts of things do we need feedback on? Looking at prioritizing, because you're gonna get lengthy list of, here are capital maintenance needs and remodeling needs, but the committee is not breaking those down into priorities. That's something we want some community feedback, but you first as board members as well obviously have thoughts on that. So, again, there's gonna be a lot of discussion that goes into that. Now, we can try to just continually,
You want our help with the survey question?
absolutely, yes.
My concern about having it on the 14th is, I guess, I'd sort of like to have time to hear what the committee,
Yeah.
what all they say, and digest it and think about it, and before we have a discussion. That's just a thought. But I'm also concerned that, because I think these surveys, I mean, I assume a small group, but maybe the perceptions people are, I'm not sure who will actually write the questions, and we would have input, but we certainly can't write them. I mean,
Right.
so I'm sure that's not the plan, but I would like to have some thoughts about it, maybe even, I know members of that committee were even interested in sort of seeing a rough draft maybe. So my concern there is the longer we push off that meeting, the longer that process could
Okay.
take. And
Well-
was the 21st, which is a Wednesday, was that not?
That was our
not
original,
possible?
but then
Oh,
we have
that's
a
the one, right,
conflict.
right. Okay, got it,
Yeah.
got it.
So,
So I don't know, well, we don't know with Susan either, right?
she had confirmed that she's available on those two dates.
Okay. So
Um,
it's just one.
Now, another option,
The only thing I would, respond, cause I appreciate that, is we're fortunate in that there won't be a whole lot of surprises coming to us,
Mhm.
particularly cause we have the opportunity to continue to monitor the facilities advisory committee. So I don't feel like on the 14th when we see that presentation, it'll be a lot of new information.
Well, for those of us who've been attending the meetings now, but not everybody's been able to.
But I was just
know,
responding
yeah.
to your thinking, like, actually to
Right.
reassure you that you've been totally up to speed the
Right.
entire time, so it's not, there are gonna be any surprises for you that night if we did continue to have the discussion right now.
That's true.
Just more like,
yeah.
you got
Right,
you
right,
got
but,
this.
yeah.
I guess another option would be on our regular meeting on the 28th to hold a workshop prior to the regular meeting.
28th of February?
At this point, we don't have anything scheduled for a closed session,
Just 2 weeks later.
so,
Yeah, but they wanna do the survey on what, March, or April? I don't know how long it takes to develop one of these. When I heard 8 pages, 12, it's a lot of serious thought.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not easy, and I
Yeah.
just am a little worried about putting it off too long. And
Yeah.
2 weeks, I think, doesn't.
Well, and looking ahead, I guess, if you see the list, we also have March 7th as a tentative date. So it's, when we have had that initial discussion as a board, so you have an idea of what sorts of things, we will bring Bill Foster here to meet with the board, to discuss the process of the survey and begin the discussion about what sort of things need to go on there. So that's another date, and that's a Wednesday on March 7th.
If I may, I believe also at the 7th, he was going to come with some, he would have.
Yeah, we need to have
Yeah,
some,
so he already would have some work in hand on the 7th.
correct. Yeah, and that's why we need to have that discussion.
That's why we need the February discussion.
Yeah, otherwise he would come empty-handed because he wouldn't have heard from us. So, yeah, no, I really feel we can continue to push on this and have something happen in February. 14th or the 19th are both fine with me.
I like the idea of, let's do it the 14th, and then if that doesn't work enough time, then at that time, we figure out what
Add
we
another
all get together.
We could
meeting.
revisit it at the next meeting too, if we had, that's fine.
If you want, we could hold the 19th as a overflow kind of opportunity in case we couldn't get through everything we wanted on the 14th, knowing that, well, we still have an hour or two set aside.
How does the 15th work? That way,
That's
it's
fine.
fresh on everybody.
We haven't asked Susan Manning about that. We did ask her about these two.
15th's good.
I can do the 15th.
She had sent me a number of dates.
Oh, yeah.
That way it'd be fresh, we would come right off. the
Dan's
water.
not available.
Dan's not there.
We get a conference.
Actually, no, I'm not attending that.
Okay,
That's the AASA conference. I'm not going this year.
okay.
Should probably take it off my calendar.
Can we get some stuff?
Thanks. That's not one of the dates that Susan gave me that she's available. She gave me a number of dates in February, but that was not one of them.
Well, if there seems to be some consensus that we should try the 14th, and then if we need more time,
At night, we can figure out a better date.
Mm-hmm.
we continue on the 19th. I mean, if we could, maybe we could all
I would
kind of
agree- I
hold
would
that,
agree with
hold
that.
that as a possibility, and even though we know Peter won't be there, Peter will be there the 14th, right? Peter, so,
I'm always here in spirit.
So if I may clarify then, for the 14th, we would list our discussion under the discussion items section, so that would be late in the agenda. So if some of the
Right.
folks in our audience needs to depart, they certainly can.
Yeah,
If we run
the
long.
committee's presenting the report, so I guess we'd put that first at the beginning under special reports. And then I suppose we could go later for a discussion.
yeah, you don't have any idea what kind of business we'll be dealing with there. I mean, I think it's nice to get that out of the way before we get this
Yeah.
2 hours, because it could be a 2-hour discussion.
I say once you're in, you're in, nobody can leave.
Nothing urgent.
There shouldn't be a
There
large
shouldn't.
number of items
There
for business,
No,
yeah.
it's not a link, I ever have it drafted.
Okay,
Okay.
so the goal of trying to have
Great.
discussion on the
I-
14th?
Thank you.
When the report is given, I think I would like to have a report that just doesn't say, we came, we saw, here's our report. I'd like to have some kind of their recommendations and maybe brief discussion of the debates and over particular issues and why they decided the way they did, because I think that would help us inform our decisions and also help us put together the question. I think you're asking us to help put together a questionnaire, so I think this, to some extent it would help inform me, and I think our whole process, if we heard a bit more about at least the central points of debate around the various issues that we had, and not simply said, we've worked hard, we studied, here it is, thank you very much. And you see what I mean? Not that we want to reopen it or things
Sure.
like that, but I'd like to hear the general thinking and maybe even some of the thinking that that was there and why it became the recommendation it did. So.
Can I also add, since I was mentioning that I'm amenable to staying as long as necessary on February 14th, but it is Valentine's Day, and I think I would be willing to chip in on heart-shaped pizza from Rockies if others as well feel like, as a nod to those who we will not be celebrating with on Valentine's Day again this year.
Which one's Valentine's Day?
The 14th.
Nice. How many years you been
Wow,
married?
I'm calling your wife. Let's text her.
Wait.
Right. All right. So,
Yeah.
if we're done with meetings, I'm ready to move to adjourn at 8:01.
Okay, so just to clarify, my understanding is we're putting this on the agenda for the 14th. We're gonna see how we do with our discussion.
Yeah.
And then at that time, we'll determine if we wanna wade into some of this
Okay.
again.
Yeah.
Is that,
That's a
Yeah.
candy maker.
okay? All right.
And then look at those other two dates. We have, at this point, scheduled with Bill Foster on March 7th and May 16th. So if we have conflicts, we're gonna have to try to find another time with him, but that's gonna be might be a challenge.
All right. Anything else on meetings? Peter's reminded me, I gotta give people time. Good reminder. Okay, all right. No, I'm sincere, that's good. All right, everybody, with nothing further,
I'd like to move to adjourn at 8:02.
and thank you, we needed a second, and we have a second. All those in favor of adjourning, let's, I'm so sorry.
You don't have to discuss.
Aye.
I know, we don't have to discuss the adjournment. All those in favor of it, I'm turning bright red. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, we are adjourned.